Hi, welcome to Willie's Web, where everyone has a story. And on my show today, I have special guests, special guest. He is a soul traveling artist that uses rap and poetry to condense light after exploring his own darkness. He has been a coach for the 2006 UMass Boston Cupsy team. He has been published in Oddball magazine. He is a feature at Kamikaze and Stone Soup. He is also a workshop leader with Writers Without Margins. Let me introduce you to the rapper, the poet, the old soul and positive thinker, Arthur Williams Jr. Welcome to my show. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Willie. I appreciate it.
So tell me, what do they call you?
I go by Stratusfier.
And where that name came from?
So it kind of went through a big process, but in the end, I was just always the kind of kid that had his head in the clouds, just always in my own thing, always in my own space. But I think I always wanted my name to represent more than that. And so I ended up settling on Stratosphere. The way it's spelled isn't like how you normally spell stratosphere. So it starts out the same with stratus. But if you go down to the Latin root, stratus means to spread. And fear, F-I-E-R, actually means pride in a couple different languages. So the name itself means spreading pride. And I feel like, so for me, I thought that's perfect because I feel like there's an inherent pride in creation. Doesn't really matter how quote unquote good it is, all right? But the success of constructing something that is emotionally moving, whether it's to just you or other people, is something worth celebrating and a great moment of pride, a great reason to be proud. And so when you share your creations like that, I think you are just inherently sort of giving a piece of that to the people who are listening to it.
Where is all this coming from? Where is all this coming from? How did you get inspired to feel like you had to do this?
I feel like part of it's my family, right? My family's always been connected to the community in a lot of ways, politically, just on the ground, trying to do things. But I think a bigger part is that, you always, not always, but if you're fortunate, you are given high expectations. I think that's a really, not everybody has that. As a Black person and a Black male, knowing the history of our culture, it's something that we still talk about all the time, how there is a long, huge period of time where nothing was expected of us, ever. And God forbid that we ever tried to. So it's a big thing to then be like, well, yes, I not only want to give more, but I am expected to give more. And so and I think also it's very important when we talk about having fulfillment in life, spiritual fulfillment and emotional fulfillment, especially being able to contribute to something larger than yourself in a very meaningful way, however small, is an incredibly important thing. I think a lot of us spend a lot of time trying to find just that, no matter how big it is. Mm-hmm. So for me, poetry, art was that root. And so it ended up taking root in this form like that.
Yeah. You're so young. Most people, the young age, don't even kind of think about giving back. I mean, I hear that from you. And I've been to your workshops, and I think you're so passionate about, sharing your knowledge and wanting people to express themselves, because that is a good thing.
Yes, I am passionate. I mean, when I was younger, people would always say, I would talk and whatever, but they'd be like, something wrong with your tone. I always had that. Apparently I always had that. And so I was like, well, I just really need to be heard. So I would spend, when kids were outside and whatever, playing video games, I would be spending my time with the dictionary, honestly trying to memorize and learn words because I just wanted to be able to communicate for myself better. And later on that translated into for my brothers. Although honestly, that was a little arrogant. They were completely capable of communicating for themselves. But I'm the oldest, so I was like, if it's up to me, it's up to me, right? So yeah. But it became a thing, and so so I don't know if you know this about me, but so I had the dual diagnosis of bipolar 2 disorder and ADD. When I had my first depressive phase when I was 19, lasted about a full year before I saw any light in terms of like emotional relief from that. And during that time, and actually a lot of the time after it, honestly, but during that time, I did not have the words, the knowledge that I did not have it within me to express what I was feeling, what I was going through. And therefore, no one could help me and I could not help myself. And so it's very important to me. I'm very passionate about people having an outlet, people being able to truly express their world, their view. It's not just their perspective, it is what they're living, even if it's just a moment. Sometimes it's just that important, it's that profound. Yeah. And so it drives me a lot.
Well, that's good because I think with your experience and the knowledge that you have to share with others is empowering. It's definitely empowering. Tell me, what about this 2016 UMass Boston Cup C team? What's that about?
Yeah, so we were actually the first Cup C team. I'm gonna be very like honest. This kind of goes back to the last question about why I'm so passionate is because I was drawn into the 2016 Cup C team. That was the first ever Cup C team from UMass Boston. And someone that I got into it because I was literally walking outside of a poetry slam competition happening in the school. And I was curious and looking in, but I don't know how long I've been standing there because somebody noticed me. And he was like, "Are you here for this?" And I was like, "Well, I don't really know. I don't know." He was like, "I think you're here for this." And he pulled me in. And that ended up being our main coach. Because of what I was going through with the bipolar disorder and whatever, I was struggling a lot in school. And so I was unable to actually participate, even though we had been in the competition itself. But that did not stop them from showing me a lot of love and saying, "Hey, you have something to contribute that we want, and we want that a part of our team, and we want you to come with us." And so when I talk about really being passionate about helping people to express, that's kind of me paying it forward because there were a bunch of people in my life who just constantly told me, "You're valuable. You have something, you're worth it," and to tell somebody that you have more than you have a story, but only you can tell it, especially in a way that really matters. We talk about empowering, that's really empowering.
Yes, it is. It's definitely empowering for people who share the same feelings that you do, and they see what you're accomplishing and they feel like, gee, if he can do it, because I think people do that all the time. They'll say to me, if you can do it, I know I can, because they can relate to what you're doing. And that is powerful. Yes. That is very powerful to know that you were able to do that. And no, I did not know, but it's going to be empowering for anyone that watches this to know that if they have a disorder, that it can be, mastered or and that they're not hopeless, because a lot of people sometimes get into this feeling that nobody else is like me. I'm the only one who's have to deal with this. Because I know I used to, my stories, my beginning stories and some of my poems, when people read them, they go, God, I'm glad to know that I'm not alone, that I'm not the only one. And I know you probably hear that when you tell your story.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I talk about it. I have poems about it. But I don't really like to make it, okay, like this is about me.
No.
All I'm saying is I try to, because what you're talking about, something I have direct experience with, is the stigma. So I was very successful in school prior to 19 years old. And so people had a lot of expectations of me. When I was going through my problems, trying to grapple with this new thing that suddenly appeared in my life, you know, all that kind of went downhill. And so what ended up happening was people were like, well, we can no longer expect this of him anymore. It just happens like that. And it actually compounded. It's not unreasonable, but it's hard to take. And it got compounded when I actually got the diagnosis 3 years later, because they were like, oh, now we know the exact reason why he won't be able to accomplish certain things or lead a certain type of life. And that really attacks your self-worth. But what you're combating, or what I feel I was always combating as a person with a mental health challenge, was the stigma related to that diagnosis. Just the fact that I had a diagnosis. It could have been anything, right? But because it took maybe 4 years. So 23. So I was diagnosed when I was 22, but it was only when I was 23 that my psychiatrist told me, this is actually really common. This is actually pretty normal. There is like nothing wrong with you. It's just how you are. And it poses its own challenges, but there are things and ways to cope and deal. You know, there are tools available. And that was a big eye-opener for me, because I realized in that moment that, I really can't decide. I really can't decide just how far I'm gonna go and what I'm going to accomplish.
And when people hear this, they'll say, wow. And you know what I mean? And they will. And I'm like so glad that we're doing this, because I learned that nothing is by accident. We are here and we touch people because we do what we do. And I would love to hear a poem right about now.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I guess since we're on the topic of mental health stuff, I will do a poem that it doesn't really explore mental health, but it's like sometimes I got frustrated when I would talk to therapists because I would be like, and I should describe that feeling. So I would be like, it's not so much that you don't know what you're talking about, but it's like, get to it, because like I don't have, we have 45 minutes and I don't know, I don't know. But I had an experience when I was younger that I never really talked about at a train station. And it also just kind of blended into this, like, what it's like to try to tell somebody, anybody really, but even a therapist, something traumatic that happened to you and try to get actual help. So this is called What Stays With You. All right, what stays with you? I'm at the train station. I don't know the time. The red line lights constantly burn, a bilious noonshine, people everywhere. Brushing bodies leave the haughty whisper of weatherproof jackets, the grumbling scrapes of burdened boots. The bright colors are working hard to make the stains stand out. The dirt frames, the dogged detachment of all refusing to notice. And I, crawling with other creatures, conform to being herded through tunnels. Wish hoarse the voice that declared me blind. Wish rough the hands that scraped the mud and gave me sight. Because I noticed it. My eyes were drawn to his stillness, disturbed by calm, alien to our anxious migrations. His skin was waxy, his cheeks were sunken, his cracked lips stiffly parted, his dull eyes unblinking, and his sternum embossed into a chest that never rose, his existence only apparent in the way it was being denied. And don't ask me about real. My insurance covers our sessions. My resources force problems into a pecking order. This is priority one. We eat together at this table, and you need to pick up the knife and fork. He was dead. And I was frightened into numbness. But when I heard the roar of oblivion, I felt blessed to board a carriage into the darkness. Now, this is where you earn my copay. That's it. Thank you.
Nice. Nice. Very nice. Now, how long did it take you to write that?
Maybe a day or two.
Huh?
It depends. Some, like this one came and it's like a day or two. But I have a poem that's taken me years and I still don't think it's done. So it's
I know poets gonna ask that question. They always like, how long did it take you to write it, and what was your inspiration? And they always wanna know how what instructions or what tips would you give people who are writing? And I know first of all, how did you get into doing the workshop? And what are some of the tips that you give some of the members in the workshop?
Okay, yeah. So I am connected by blood to a poet named Scoot. And he'd been working with Writers Without Margins within the Boston area for a while. And they came to him like, hey, we know you, we like your style. We want you to do a workshop. And he was like, okay, but I need to be able to have my team. I need to be able to pick somebody to help me out. They were like, go for it. So he called on me. Nice. And so that's how, and then I talked to them. I heard about their mission. Writers Without Margins' goal is to spread creative writing throughout the community and really promote it as a source of, as a therapeutic source. So, we're talking about prose, we're talking about poetry, even journaling, but those things, for me especially, when I was going through my stuff, journaling was incredibly important. I remember it was a big milestone when I got through my first journal. And it's a big way to help with that first step into actually admitting that there's an issue, realizing that, because when you start to write your thoughts and see them over time, you realize, oh, this might not be, and then that can help you. Not only can it help you get to the point where you're like, I need to go see a therapist and talk to somebody, but you also now have some data with which to, draw from, have some words already, and some thoughts already with you when you go to talk about what you've been experiencing. Mm-hmm. So these are all very helpful things that you can achieve through creative writing. So when I learned about that, I was like, yeah, this is something that I definitely want to do. And they were working within my neighborhood, which is the neighborhood I grew up in anyway, which is that Dorchester, Roxbury-ish area, or I should say Roxbury, Dorchester-ish area of like Grove Hall, Dudley, of those places. And they were also partnered with the Grove Hall BPL, Boston Public Library. So I was like, yeah, let's do it.
Yes.
Big things that I tell people in poetry workshop. One is brainstorm. Gotta brainstorm. You gotta. It's more than just writing a little circle and doing some lines. You are getting the raw material for what you are about to write, and you are also. This is something I feel like was never really explained to me, but you are also refining your thought process. So I always tell people in my workshop that the brainstorm is a cyclical process of refining your data points. So you definitely have to do that. it doesn't have to be like in the form of that little diagram, but if you're free writing, whatever it is, you are getting it down on paper, identifying things that you want to keep, especially if you're seeing recurring things. Especially we talk about poetry because you're honestly gonna feel you're doing a lot better with the poem if you stick with a single or maybe just a few images. And then you're trying to get it down to that point and then bring it back to the top and do it again. The other big thing that I would say is don't be redundant, right? So don't, if you're writing, don't just take a headline and be like, oh, let me write a poem about this, but it's a summary. You're just talking about this thing that happened. You want to be relevant. You want to take that information and you want to apply your relevant perspective to that subject, to that theme.
Rather than repeat what you heard, give it new life.
Exactly. Because art, the whole goal, well, I don't know if it's the goal of art, but it's the truth, the reality of art is that art is valuable. And the reason that art is valuable is because art informs culture. Art makes people go, is this tradition really necessary? Is this thing really the way I thought it was? And in so doing, creates a new cycle of research that then informs design infrastructure, that then informs new culture, that then informs new art. So when you talk about art, you really are trying to spin it. You are in a way that is authentic, to you.
Yes.
And you don't necessarily have to comment, but you do have to present it from a very true and real place. And that's just your view.
Yes. You said you did say you were a native of Dorchester, Roxbury.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yes. Boston born and bred. And that's where I was running.
Are you doing any more workshops? Are you guys still doing workshops?
Yes, actually, we have a workshop slated to still with the BPL, currently the Grove Hall BPL, but in Writers Without Margins. But it starts February 15th. It goes from the 15th of February to March 8th. It's every Monday, 7 to 8 p.m. Or 7 to 8:30, depending on what they let us do. And it's going to be great. It's going to be fun. It's an adept. They'll be calling it the Adept Workshop because it's building on the last workshop. It's a workshop for people who feel that they have stronger command of poetry. So you're not really new to it. Right. And so you're willing to really go dive deep and get some more things from it.
I think the class, because I noticed when I came to it, I think it's not really a beginner class. It's more like a intermediate for people who are kind of, you've written poetry, you kind of know the structure of poetry, but you're trying to find a voice. You're trying to make sure you have your voice and take it to another level.
Yes. That's what it's about. You're right.
Yes.
So before you go to the BPL, search us up and register, you should know that, at least for me, my workshops, when I design them, they're all skills-based. So the first workshop is like that. And that's probably why you felt that way. Because a lot of workshops you'll go to, especially if they're beginner workshops, it's just about doing a couple prompts and then everybody's sharing and getting an idea of what everybody does and the workshop is over. You might do that a couple times and end up peer reviewing, and that's cool too because you get a lot of ideas. But in the end, right, what you're doing is writing a little bit, speaking a little bit, done, right? And I feel like that's a good way to get introduced to poetry, to see if maybe you like it or you don't or whatever. But if you like poetry, even if you don't really write poetry, then what you're really looking for is, how did they write that? How did, this person, how did Langston Hughes, how did, Toni Morrison, how did whoever you want to say, right? Yeah. How did they write in this way?
It's structural. It's definitely structural, and it's definitely telling you, because I kind of, what you teach, kind of what I learned in college about writing poetry with the IMH. I'm like, oh, it's actually a poetry class that does that, and couplets and really structure. That is great for people who write poetry all the time, and they have these formats and they're doing these things and don't know what they're doing. So you kind of give it a name, and now I know what I'm really doing.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I can't tell you how many things that I was already doing and then got introduced to the term in poetry, and I was like, oh snap, that's what it is. And now I can like really consciously apply it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it, honestly, because I'm like, I do want more time for participants to share, but, you know, in my head, I'm always thinking if they want to go out and share, you know, they can hit any open mic. Open mics are still happening all throughout the country, pretty sure, but definitely in Boston, I know a few, right? Stone Soup, Untitled Open Mic.
Are they Zoom? Can you name a few for us?
Yeah, so Stone Soup does one. I think they do it every Tuesday or every other Tuesday or something like that. So you could go to Facebook and type in Stone Soup and you'll find it. Untitled Open Mic does it, I think, every first and third Wednesday of every month. If you type Facebook Untitled Open Mic, you can find it. Untitled is also on Instagram. If you wanted to go look, that's just two. I know, I'm not sure if the Lizard Lounge is doing anything or anything affiliated with that, but if you're just looking to go share and hear your poetry, get some sort of review, or at least just feel some love for what you do, then those are great places to go.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to share and be heard, there are places for you to do that. But if you're trying to refine your poetic skill, refine your craft, then you're going to want to sit in a place that's going to tell you, like, that's going to, even if you already know it, at least it's a refresher, right? If you don't know it, it's exposing you to things that you might be doing, like we were saying, but did not know the term for it, or was not doing at all.
Right.
And suddenly you're like, oh wow. It just transforms your poetry when that happens.
It puts some tools in your arsenal.
Yeah. I mean, the first one, you know, our thing was, we want people to, like you were saying, we really want people to feel confident in their ability to express themselves. That's what we want when people leave the workshop, right?
Can you give us another poem?
Yeah, for sure. As an example, actually, this one I really want to shout out you, because you told me about the MLK competition, and it was too late to submit, but I was really actually inspired to do it. So I ended up writing it, and I actually think it came out really cool. So I'm glad I can share it with you, because I was
won.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Hey, congratulations. That's amazing. Proud. Hey, and now I can say one of my poetry workshop participants won a competition through poetry. So there you go. All right. So this is my MLK poem called Golden Hour. All right. Golden Hour. When I imagine Martin's dream, rays of sun coax the bleary eyes of unwilling children packed half-conscious into fleets chartered to their schools, and the parents, waving goodbye, do not see any passenger as a colonist bent on conquering their native land. I imagine teachers prepping devotedly for the day's classes, passionate as they answer the call to rear the nation, taking education as their mission without seeing a single student as the refugee of a mass exodus, seeking sanctuary and trespassing on sacred ground to secure it. When I think about Martin, as he stood before protesters who marched in unprecedented solidarity to form a gathering truly resplendent as a beacon for the changes to come, I imagine he saw a single star in the dead of night and gave his speech as a fantastical tale to be made real in the golden hour.
Nice.
Thank you.
Nice. Very nice.
Snaps.
Snap, snap. Well, I want to thank you. Our time is up, but I want to thank you for coming. And I will put all your information on the website, on the YouTube underneath. I'll put all your information. Is there any club or anything you want to, last words you want to say before we close?
Sure, yeah. If you're listening or watching, whatever it is, you could find me on Facebook, Arthur Stratusfier Williams. You can also find me on Instagram at the Stratusphere. If you're interested in my music, I have a few videos up on my Facebook if you happen to go there. It's also on my Instagram, on my IGTV. Or if you just want to hear it as a mix and don't care about animation, you can go on my SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/Stratosound. And that'd be cool. I'd love to see people there. You can hit me up, DM me, whatever. I'm always down to talk. And the last thing I really want to say, though, after shamelessly plugging all my things, is everybody please stay well, stay healthy, stay safe. Do the things that you need to do in a way that you can look back and say, I'm glad I did it like that. It's a very important thing to be right with yourself and your spirit. And I just hope that everybody celebrates the new year, even though so much is going on, with a sincere gratitude for having made it through last year and a sincere motivation to continue to look forward in this new year. And I just pray that everybody stays well and that some of y'all end up at my workshop.
Yay! I will definitely put the information up there. And thank you, Arthur Williams Jr. Stratify. Did I say that right?
No, Stratusphere. But you can just call me Strat. You call me Strat. I go by that. It's cool.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for coming on and sharing that information with us in the web.
Of course.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I appreciate you, Willie.
We'll stay connected.
All right.
All right. Until next time.
Until next time.
All right. Until next time. Thank you guys for stopping in the web.
All right. Bye.